If your wife/GF berates you in public settings, why stay with someone abusive like that? I had a friend whose then wife used to deride him every chance she got. Phrases like "do it again" and "I'll drop you for a real man" when he would get a little instruction of hers incorrect or perform a task substandardly. I vividly remember him asking her if he could hang out with me one night, and she said, "Only if I can go to the strip and find a better husband while you're gone." Apostrophe. But did he let her go find a better husband and hang out with you that night? Asking the real questions. He hung out with me and called her bluff. She went home that night, but was F another guy very soon after. Least surprising follow up on Reddit ever. The one time it happened, I broke up with her. Here is a man with self-respect. What was her reaction? She wasn't happy. Comfort and/or familiarity. You meant alimony plus child support. / 10% of divorces involve alimony. Not sure why people keep talking about it as if it's in every single divorce. Not just alimony, child support. And if you have young kids, the idea of only seeing them once a week or only on weekends is unbearable. So men choose to put up with it. It's something society doesn't want to talk about. I'm fine talking about child support, and that's why I didn't comment against it. You'll see some of my other comments lower down supporting child support reform. I agree it's a huge problem. I just think alimony is used a lot more sparingly than people think, and that it is largely used appropriately for people who left the workplace to do unpaid care work and now cannot re-enter due to employment gap. I'm tired of it being the scapegoat when child support is the larger issue. I've been married for over 30 years. One of the main reasons why we are together is mutual respect. Both publicly and privately. No berating them. No put-downs or jokes at their expense. I wouldn't stay with someone who doesn't show respect to me, nor would I expect anyone to stay with me if I didn't do that same to them. Did this come naturally to your relationship? Or did you have to have a conversation about what was acceptable and what was not? We never had a discussion about what constitutes basic respect. We are both pretty basic, reasonable people, so I guess it would be natural. We have the same thoughts about a great number of things: money/spending, parenting, household chores, so the drama level is pretty low. It's kind of like you can stick to a diet if you don't have food in your house. We don't have a lot of hang-ups or resentment, so there's not a lot of reason to be disrespectful to each other. If a man reports abuse, he'll be laughed at by the police. If he has kids with her, he may sacrifice everything to stay until they're 18. One of my best friends since middle school woke up the day after his 18th birthday to his father shaking his hand and walking out. Their relationship got a little rough until my friend got married himself. Now they are thick as thieves and have sons that are almost the same age. That's rough, but I can get it. Glad they got closer. Same reason that abused women stay in those relationships. They either think they deserve it or that they can't get anyone else/can't escape it. It's not the same reason. Men never get custody of the children. It's hard to afford to pay for 2 households. That fits in the can't escape category. It's a difference. Yes. But it's still part of an overarching reason I gave. The woman I dated before I met my now fiance was emotionally abusive and berated me. I stuck it out for nearly 3 years because she blamed those behaviors on a mixture of her depression and not having weed when she felt she needed it. Long story short, she wouldn't eat without being high, and she claimed a physical ailment, but I strongly suspect it was only ever in her head. I stayed because I thought I could help her. If I stuck it out, things would improve as she found the right meds, etc. I was always a sucker for people in need, and this girl needed help. She had moments of being incredibly sweet, but they were fleeting compared to when I felt I was walking on eggshells. What made me leave? She finally broke my goodwill. It took years, but she did. I was driving us home after a planned specialist hospital visit, where they didn't find anything wrong with her, much to her disappointment. And I asked the question, so what now? You can't keep going through life smoking weed just to be able to eat. She yelled at me the entire car ride, and as we pulled into the driveway, I looked at her and told her I could no longer tolerate the abuse or the behaviors she had exhibited. It was simultaneously upsetting and freeing to give up on the relationship. I had been close to her family and a few friends, but I was no longer being yelled at or blamed for everything wrong. Most people stay because they want to help. We don't want to be alone. And I hate to say it, but many of us have never experienced anything better. I had always been a caretaker of sorts in relationships, and it wasn't until I met my Luna that I experienced something where it felt like we were both equally giving and taking. You don't. That's when you start checking out until it reaches a catastrophic meltdown. Then the relationship is dead for good. I couldn't break up with my ex so easily because I was stupid enough to build my life around her. It took a few years before it was finally over. Silly question, but what do you mean by building my life around her? Things like sharing legal contracts, shared bank accounts, mortgages, loans, custody of children. I had to dedicate my time only to her and unable to make or hang out with friends of my own. If I so much as went with friends, only for a brief part of the day, she'd have a meltdown about how I'm ignoring her or abandoning her. She'd have fits of rage too when I wanted to see my family for an extended time. Basically, I couldn't go anywhere without her, so I had to leave all my peers behind. We had to move somewhere far away, closer to her job and far away from mine. Any activity we would do, it was about her. Anything I wanted to do was just boring or brushed off by her. I had to build my life around her happiness or else I'd be even more miserable. Oh, and don't get me started on when other women had the audacity to talk to me, like the waitress talking my order. I see she was all about herself, and you were included in that perspective of herself. What about if she cared about your hobbies or she would go above and beyond for you in certain cases? Would you have left then? Man, anyone doing this is a pose. But we always turn a blind eye when women do it. Always people thinking the man deserved it. I've seen this happen multiple times in schools as well. Mothers treating their husband like rotten wood in front of their kids and everyone looking mad at the man. I think we should talk more about this, because in the last few decades all the focus has been on how men are bad people, but no one talks about how bad people are bad all around. And that includes women, and we shouldn't find excuses or how to exclude women from being put on the bad behavior spotlight. If any gender berates their so or partner in public, they not only don't respect them, they don't respect themselves to have the decency of not airing your dirty laundry out in public. Immediately over and out. My dad truly loved her. He was also a missionary, a job that he loved, and knew he would lose it because missionaries couldn't be divorced. He was also afraid of losing my little brother, who wasn't old enough to realize what a monster my mom was. It took her running off with said little brother to another state, calling all the churches who supported us and convincing them to stop because she claimed he was abusive. I remember feeling so relieved when that happened, strange as that might sound, because now he had no choice but to divorce her, right? Everything was fucked. We had no money and we might never see my baby brother again, but at least the monster was gone. But when I asked him, he refused. It wasn't until he realized that a custody battle was the only way to get my brother back that he finally agreed to do it. In the end, regardless of all the reasons he had not to divorce, they were nothing but excuses to hide the fact that he still loved. I think that goes for most abusive situations. There's plenty of other factors, sure, but love is a powerful thing, and it's not always good. It's the end result of happy wife, happy life, or the idea that the woman is the priority and wears the pants, and if you're on her bad side, you're sleeping on the couch and no sex for you. Also, you have less authority and leverage inside of marriage than you do outside of it. So once you're married, you don't have much of a way to stand up for yourself without risk. Happy spouse, happy house. That happened to me last May and was one of the big reasons I left. Most domestic violence is women on men. BTW. Yup, unreported. Makes me think, if women had the physical strength, they 100% would be just a couple steps away from reversing the gender domestic violence statistics. 70% of non-reciprocal domestic violence is perpetuated by women. The stereotype of typical DV being a man beating a woman is wrong. Abuse statistics is kind of deceptive. Because men don't report. Women sometimes physically abuse men despite being weaker. Because it also gives kind of impunity. Men are not supposed to beat women, even if she slaps him or throws things at him. Why staying? For example, because of kids and shared mortgage. Another thing is swinging mood. She may be horrible one day, but then she is suddenly nice and loving. Decision to break up takes some time, and while you are thinking how to go on, her mood changes and you reconsider. A lot of women don't report DV either. It's because of shame and feeling guilty for no reason. That's how victims think in general, not only men. That's why I don't see there is a reason to think the statistics are wrong somehow. To acknowledge some men suffer of abuse, you don't have to compete who has it worse. Makes me think, if women had the physical strength, they 100% would be just a couple steps away from reversing the gender domestic violence statistics. Lesbians are well known to be the highest risk group for domestic violence. I'll take being a man in a relationship any day for this reason. Almost every time there is a confrontation, my life is not in danger unless the woman picks up a knife or is MMA champion Zhang Weili. I can just walk away. But a woman in an abusive relationship will actually fear for her life if a man lays hands on her. Moral of the story: never get married. You're welcome. For the vast majority of men, the costs of leaving are more than the impact of the abuse. A few men probably just grew immune to it. The way I described it before was that dating women is like martial arts. You just need to pick what kind of hit you're comfortable taking. Same reasons anyone stays in an abusive relationship: fear, low self-esteem, depression, lack of support system. Also, I suggest you look up statistics on domestic violence. Your post implies that men are more likely to physically assault their partners. Half of his stuff. Oh, women commit but just doesn't get reported. This is what I talk about all the time in my responses to many of these posts. People annihilate me for saying it. Downvotes like a mofo and sharp-tongued BS come out of nowhere. This stuff happened to me all the time before I took Talikis 101 and dumped that bitch. I got sick of it. And they did it all the time. And many of them did it. It wasn't just one or two. I'm not their bee, and I'm not their slave. Go do that to some other guy. Ain't got time for that level of ignorance. Then when I tell them how amazing single life is, they get so offended like it requires a B-wire woman to make a man's life complete. Sorry ladies, not the case. We men do just fine without you. Who's Lee Kiss? A radio guy from a while ago. Women hated him. Guys loved him. Read up on Tom Lee Kiss and you'll see what I mean. He was every man's dad because he was the self-proclaimed father figure for guys whose dads were pussies. As much as I love my dad, I probably need to watch some of his content because he didn't teach me jackass about that kind of stuff lol. And that's why Tom Lee Kiss had so many sons. It's really brutal by today's standards, especially, but it's funny as hell. You'll dig it. I wouldn't stand for it. I'd make it crystal clear she crossed the line and better check herself. Respect goes both ways. Even if you agree with what she's saying, she royally ed up by berating in public instead of politely bringing it to your attention privately. We are conditioned for emotional battery. It's called suppression, baby. Not something to celebrate, but I can confirm many years where I would simply shut up and take it because the fight wasn't worth it. It's somehow all my fault, so how can I justify thinking anything she does is bad? We're all either too defeated to fight it, or we're too afraid to lose the one person that gives us attention and intimacy, or both. Women and men are similarly aggressive. They just express that aggressive in different ways. As for why people stay in abusive relationships, there are many reasons. 1. The person doesn't realize it's abusive / it's been normalized. 2. Children. Abusive women use their children to harm their ex-partners. 3. Fear of what their partner might do and a desire to placate. For instance, some abusive women do stuff like say will hurt themselves or call the police and claim you hurt them. 4. Family pressure to stay together. 5. Financially it might not be feasible. 6. Codependence. 7. Mental illness, for either person or even the mix of both create that. Because you've never been told that this is no worse than a guy hitting a woman in public. Same reason anyone stays with an abusive shat. They think it's the best they can do. Why you think a man would stay in a situation like this though? Some people just haven't realized that there are worse things than being alone. My 20-year marriage ended in divorce when my ex went from "I'm not happy in this relationship" to "I want a divorce" in the space of a few weeks. Neither of us had been happy for at least several years, and we were both terrible communicators. But the way it ended, and the suddenness of it, absolutely wrecked my self-esteem. As I recovered and began dating, I ended up with a GF for a couple of years who was terribly verbally and emotionally abusive to me. To be fair, she never did this in public, only privately. At first I was bewildered, but decided to stick it out a little longer, then a little longer still, and then some more. Eventually I began to set boundaries for the worst of her shittiness, which she honored. She was trying, but it was otherwise relentless. I ended up breaking it off, and I think it was because I began to love myself. And when you love someone, you will intervene to prevent them from getting hurt. You don't. If she's your GF, you've got it easy. You can dump her just because you're in a bad mood, or because don't like the way she puts the cap on her toothpaste. A wife is different. Start gathering irrefutable evidence by running recordings, if legal in your state, to record private conversations. Look up single consent surveillance laws in your state and start capturing the abuse. You can record anything you want in a public setting with your cell phone. That's legally protected in all states as far as I know. You must get enough evidence to establish a pattern. It must be consistent over a long enough period of time. This requires good poker face and patience while you practice the art of saying "nice doggy" while reaching behind you to pick up a rock. A single recording won't work unless she threatens or demonstrates physical violence or a crime against you, such as admitting to intentionally planning or proceeding to slander you with social media to ruin your reputation, occupation, etc. Use a good recording app on your cell phone. Record to MP3 to save space. After you've got enough to establish an irrefutable pattern, back that data up, get it off your phone, and call a divorce lawyer, and follow every single bit of advice they give you. Critical: never let onto what you're doing. Keep her in the dark, and play along, until the sheriff is knocking on the door, and serving her with very one-sided divorce papers for spousal abuse and cruelty. If you're getting treated like this, in many cases, the woman is cheating and trying to trick you into filing for divorce so she can take you to the cleaners, so you end up paying for her vacations with her new cheating partner. If she's your wife, start looking for signs of cheating behavior: staying out late, protective cell phone behavior, bedroom cute off, bitchy behavior, etc., and prepare yourself to possibly find it's happening. Remember, always listen to a cruel woman's threats and accusations against you. She's actually revealing what she's up to behind your back.